Harlem, 1936. A black Cadillac rolls through the streets at midnight. Inside sits America's most feared gangster. But tonight, Bumpy Johnson isn't hunting rival mobsters. He's hunting something far more dangerous: men in white hoods who've been terrorizing his neighborhood. What happens next will become one of the most suppressed stories in American history, a story so explosive it's been buried for nearly 90 years. But before we reveal what Bumpy did that night, you need to understand why even the Mafia was terrified of crossing him. Most people know Bumpy Johnson as Harlem's Godfather, the man who controlled the numbers racket and stood toe-to-toe with the Italian mob. But there's a side of Bumpy that's been deliberately erased from history books. While Al Capone made headlines, Bumpy Johnson was building something different in Harlem. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a protector. In a time when police wouldn't respond to calls in black neighborhoods when Jim Crow ruled with an iron fist, Bumpy became the law. And when the KKK decided to bring their terror campaign north in the mid-1930s, they made one fatal miscalculation. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you gets wild. 1935. The Klan was at the height of its power, over 4 million members nationwide. They weren't just burning crosses in the South anymore. They were expanding into northern cities, including New York. Harlem residents started finding threatening notes. Crosses were burned. Black-owned businesses received warnings. Leave or face the consequences. The NYPD, they did nothing. Some officers were rumored to be Klan members themselves. But the Klan didn't know one crucial thing about Harlem. It belonged to Bumpy Johnson. What happened when these two forces collided? The answer involves a baseball bat, a dark warehouse, and a message so brutal it would echo through the underworld for decades. According to sources close to Bumpy, testimonies that only surfaced decades later, the Klan made their first major move in spring of 1936. They targeted a popular jazz club on Lenox Avenue, owned by one of Bumpy's associates. 3 men in civilian clothes walked in. They weren't there for the music. They were there to send a message. They started a fight, pulled out weapons, threatened the owner, said the invisible empire was coming to clean up Harlem. They left before the police arrived, but they didn't leave before someone made a phone call. Bumpy Johnson got the message within the hour, and here's where the story gets interesting, because Bumpy didn't just get angry, he got strategic. What he did next involved calling in favors from the most unlikely ally imaginable. But first, let me show you the blueprint he used. Bumpy understood something most people didn't. The KKK's power came from fear and anonymity. They hid behind hoods because exposure meant vulnerability. So Bumpy decided to do what law enforcement wouldn't. He exposed them. Step 1. Intelligence gathering. Bumpy put his entire network on alert. Every numbers runner, every bartender, every doorman was told to watch for suspicious activity. Within days, they identified 3 local Klan members. Step 2. Send a message. And this is where it gets brutal. According to Frank Lucas, who worked under Bumpy years later, Johnson didn't kill the Klan members. He did something far more effective. He humiliated them. The details of what happened in that warehouse are graphic, but they reveal everything about Bumpy's psychology. Late spring, 1936. 3 Klan members were grabbed off the street by Bumpy's men. Not all at once, but over the course of a week. Each one vanished without a trace. They were taken to a warehouse Bumpy controlled in the Bronx. And here's what makes this story different from typical mob violence. Bumpy didn't torture them for information. He tortured them to make a point. According to accounts from Bumpy's inner circle, each man was stripped of their hood and robe, their identities were photographed, then they were beaten. Not to death, but enough to ensure they'd remember. But here's the genius move. Bumpy didn't kill them. He released them. All 3, over the course of several days, were dropped off in their own neighborhoods, marked, broken, and carrying a message. Tell your friends, Harlem is closed, come back, and you won't leave. The photographs Bumpy's men took? They were distributed throughout Harlem's underground network. Suddenly, the invisible empire wasn't so invisible anymore. Within months, KKK activity in Harlem dropped to nearly zero. The crosses stopped burning. The threatening letters stopped coming. But the story doesn't end there. Because what happened next proved that Bumpy's war with the Klan had consequences that reached all the way to the top of both the criminal underworld and the civil rights movement. And one person took notice. Someone who would change the course of history. Years later, Malcolm X would come to Harlem. He'd meet Bumpy Johnson. He'd learn about this untold history. And while Malcolm and Bumpy came from different worlds, they shared one belief. Black people had the right to defend themselves by any means necessary. The warehouse incident became legend in Harlem. Not because it was violent, violence was common, but because it worked. It proved that organized resistance could push back against organized hate. But here's what they don't teach in history class. Bumpy Johnson's approach influenced a generation of activists. Not through violence necessarily, but through the principle that you don't negotiate with terrorists, you confront them. And the most shocking part? The government knew. They had files on all of it. What those files reveal will blow your mind. FBI files released decades later, heavily redacted, show that federal agents were aware of the confrontation between Johnson and the Klan. But they did nothing. Why? Because in 1936 America, the idea of a black gangster successfully defending his community against the KKK was politically explosive. It contradicted the narrative that black Americans needed to wait patiently for justice. Bumpy Johnson proved you could fight back, and that terrified people in power more than any crime he ever committed. Today, Bumpy Johnson is remembered as a gangster. Hollywood plays up the violence, the numbers running, the connections to the mob, but they erase this story. They erase the man who stood between the Klan and Harlem. Was Bumpy Johnson a saint? Absolutely not. He ran illegal operations, hurt people, enriched himself. But he was also a product of his time, a time when the law wouldn't protect you, when justice was a luxury black Americans couldn't afford. And that warehouse in the Bronx? It still stands today. Empty now, forgotten. But the walls remember a night when fear met fearlessness, and fear blinked first. This is the story they don't want you to know. The story of how one man's refusal to back down changed Harlem forever. If this documentary opened your eyes to history that's been buried, hit that subscribe button, because there are dozens more untold stories about Bumpy Johnson that need to be heard. Next time, the secret meeting between Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X that the FBI tried to erase from history. You won't want to miss it.